He has only been on the job for a few days, but Trump loyalist Bill Pulte is already cleaning house as the president's new acting director of national intelligence. A senior White House official confirms to MS Now firings are now underway at the office of the ODNI, something the president explicitly said he wanted to see under Pulte, who, as a reminder, has no intelligence or national security experience. In a letter sent to Pulte before the news broke, top Democrats on the House and Senate Intel committees expressed their alarm that hundreds of people might lose their jobs, telling Pulte, quote, "Given your lack of experience within the intelligence community, it is difficult to imagine that in such a short amount of time, you have already developed fully informed views as to how to shrink ODNI without incurring risks to national security." Democratic Congressman and ranking member of the House Intel Committee, Jim Himes, joins me now. He was one of the authors of that letter to Pulte. Congressman, thank you so much. You warned Pulte against these firings. He did it anyway. Now what?
Yeah, well, we don't really know what's happened. You know, one of the many awful things about this is that they're not keeping Congress informed, and we've been trying all morning to get a sense for what's done. But let's bring this home for people, because most folks will not have heard of the ODNI, right? The Office of the Director of National Intelligence. As I am talking to you right now, there is an operations floor where people from CIA and the ODNI and FBI are staring into screens, watching terrorist plots unfold, watching very bad people all over this country. It's called the National Counterterrorism Center, and it's inside the ODNI. That's one of the many, many critical things that the ODNI does. Now, like any other government agency, the ODNI, I'm sure, could use reform in being streamlined, but you can imagine what happens, and this was the point of Mark Warner and my letter, when you have somebody with precisely zero experience, a Nepo baby who may not have known a month ago what DNI stood for, march in and say, I'm firing you and you and you. You know, this is not, the stakes are enormously high because the ODNI has a lot of people who work every single day keeping Americans safe and secure. And so if he just starts willy-nilly firing people, it is going to increase the probability that there is a terrorist attack inside the United States. It's going to increase the ability of cartel people to move fentanyl and weapons into the United States. So that's what the stakes are here.
You led me exactly where I wanted to go in focusing on the stakes. Let's underscore everything you've said by bringing up the responsibilities of the DNI, overseeing and directing implementation of the National Intelligence Program, serving as principal advisor to the President, the National Security Council, and the Homeland Security Council on issues of national security. All 18 intel community agencies report to this office. Have you or your Republican colleagues been given any indication of how temporary Bill Pulte's temporary position really is?
No, we haven't been told a thing, and that's part of the tragedy here, right? Because, you know, we all breathed a little bit of a sigh of relief when Tulsi Gabbard said she was on her way out. And then, of course, we heard that Bill Pulte would get the job. And this is, make no mistake, this is not a partisan thing. This is not a Democrat, you know, raising hell over something that Donald Trump did. Republican senators, people who confirmed Kash Patel at FBI, who confirmed Tulsi Gabbard at the DNI, who confirmed Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon. This is who we're talking about. They said, wait a minute, Bill Pulte, that just doesn't work for us. So this is not a partisan thing. This is Congress being up in arms over an appointment that is dangerous, flat out dangerous, especially since shortly thereafter, the president said he would nominate Jay Clayton. Now, Jay Clayton is a guy I've known for decades, and in the context of a Trump presidential appointment, Jay Clayton is a substantial improvement over Tulsi Gabbard and is on the opposite end of the spectrum from Bill Pulte. So that's just sitting there waiting to get done. And you may remember that when he nominated Jay Clayton, the Senate said, that's fine, we'll confirm him in 2 days. And then, of course, we went back to Bill Pulte land, which, you know, is not atypical of Donald Trump, but I'm telling you, is making this country less safe as we speak.
Congressman Himes, you were making the point just a second ago that this is not a partisan question. Just to add to the list of Republicans that you had referenced there, I want you to take a listen. This is brand new sound from Senator Thom Tillis reacting to Pulte's appointment.
My guess is, based on his past experience, it's just going to be another hot, steamy pile of Doge shit. I think he's an incompetent sycophant and not the right person to lead DNI.
Okay, so what do they want to do about it then, Senator? I mean, if anyone has the ear of this White House, it would be Senate Republicans. I appreciate that sound from Senator Tillis, but there has to be another forcing mechanism here.
Pretty colorful, colorful. Look, I don't know. It's always hard for me to answer questions about what's happening inside the playroom that is Donald Trump's skull, right? I don't know if he cares what Republican senators think. I'm always worried that when Republican senators like Thom Tillis say what they is, it may just because sort of Trump has the decision-making, characteristics of a 6-year-old angry boy, that might just dig him in even more. So I just don't know. What I do know is that Jay Clayton would get confirmed in about a millisecond, and that the American people would be a lot safe. Look, another way to look at it, I think most Americans know what would happen if some Nepo baby with no experience showed up at their workplaces and just on moment one started firing people. But I couldn't help listen in on the segment you just did about the catastrophe, which is this administration's scrambling to get back to where they were at the start of their own decision to attack Iran. I mean, they're going to be so lucky if they get the Strait of Hormuz reopened, which it was before this war. If they can get gasoline prices back to the point where it was before the war, this is the crew that is making decisions about Bill Pulte, and there's no reason to expect any better result as a result of this particular madness.
Congressman, I was reading the letter that you and Senator Warner sent, and one of the things that struck me was the number of times you say to Pulte, listen, you better maintain all of the written records of what is happening there. And it seems to me there is a thinly veiled concern about the possibility of you not only not knowing what is happening right now at ODNI, but the possibility that we might never know. The congressional oversight may not be possible. What is driving that fear? And have you heard from ODNI? Do you believe that they're going to follow any letter of the law?
Well, good question. And we haven't raised this very obvious point because we've been so focused on the fact that Bill Pulte has zero experience in national security. Let's remember what he did at an agency that very few Americans have ever heard of, the Federal Housing Finance Agency, which he still sits atop. Did he do that to improve the supply of housing in the United States? Did he improve the supply of housing? No, he did not. He used that as a platform. And believe me, FHFA is not a terribly good platform for attacking the president's enemies, but that's what he did. He went after Adam Schiff, tried to gin up a prosecution. He went after Letitia James of New York, trying to gin up a prosecution under ridiculous pretenses. The DNI, the American intelligence community, has people with guns. It has people with, surveillance capabilities. And none of that stuff is ever supposed to be used inside the United States, certainly not against political antagonists. But we have zero reason to believe that Bill Pulte isn't going to do exactly what he did at FHFA. So it is critical. And, people need to remember that the destruction of records or the failure to keep records is a felony. And that's the point that Mark Warner and I are trying to make.
All right, Congressman Jim Himes, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Alicia.